Good evening. I welcome you to this Friday's Friday Study Circle, where we basically reflect and discuss and share the text mostly from Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And we usually start with Chitraji sharing the readings, whatever she would want to discuss this week. So I request her to do the same if she feels comfortable this week as well.
Yeah, already I sent that message, actually from, that only I have now. I was going through that. I will read it again, actually. I forwarded in the circle. This is what is remarkable. I don't know from which it is, from rays of light. Sunlit path only, no? It is. Yeah.
Yes, sunlit path only.
Yeah, it's page number 162. It is there. Yeah. You can bring it in the screen.
Yes, I am just trying.
Yeah. Because everyone can read.
Yeah, so I found it on Incarnate World only.
Yeah.
Yes, because this is
Yeah,
what.
from this, no, yeah. This is what is remarkable, that when one is perfectly surrendered to the divine, one is perfectly free. And this is the absolute condition for freedom, to belong to the divine alone. You are free from the whole world because you belong only to him. And this surrender is the supreme liberation. You are also free from your little personal ego. And of all things, this is the most difficult and the happiest too. The only thing that can give you a constant peace and uninterpreted joy and the feeling of an infinite freedom from all that afflicts you, doubts, diminishes, impoverishes you, and from all that can create the least anxiety in you, the least fear. You are no longer afraid of anything. You no longer fear anything. You are the supreme master of your destiny because it is the divine who wills in you and guides everything. But this does not happen overnight. A little time and a great deal of order in the will, not fearing to make any effort and not losing heart when one does not succeed, knowing that the victory is certain and that one must last out until it comes. There you are. When I read this, no, yeah, I felt I am, yeah, I am in a very, very, very remote corner actually. Because first of all, that fear and anxiety, if it is there, really, you are not sincere. Mother mentioned somewhere else, no, if there is any fear or any sadness, anything is there, be sure you are not sincere. So definitely that is there. And also about the surrender, of course, she is telling in the, actually, yeah, not fearing to make any effort and not losing heart. Yes, that is again encouraging. Yeah, not losing heart when one does not succeed. Yeah, it is a lifelong process, I feel, this fulfilled surrender. But in Savitri also it comes, no, the vast surrender is his only strength. But for that vast surrender, I mean, you have to be aware of all the parts of your being. I feel like that. And all the defects of your being, no? Then only you can surrender everything. Otherwise, how do you surrender? That is my question. If you say, I surrender everything to you, Mother, if you say through your mouth or word, whether you are surrendering it fully or so many things are, if you yourself don't know about, I mean, what is going on inside, I mean, yeah, then that surrender won't be a fulfilled one. That is the problem I feel with me actually. If I can't find everything inside which is against the goal, I mean, which is not taking me towards that goal, then that surrender is not a fulfilled surrender, I feel. If the fulfilled surrender is not there, how can I say it is, I mean, only divine is taking me, I mean, yeah, that thing came to me. This is my reflection in this. Yeah.
You know, this sounds so much like when we were discussing faith, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, whatever you just said, I think would be 100% applicable to faith, that have faith only in the divine. You know, we had read that.
Yeah.
Yes, you do, you know, all these things, again, the fear, the everything, you know, how it was that put your faith only in the divine, because nobody else can give you anything. The language of that was so strong, right? Because somewhere we keep falling, right? We keep falling that, okay, this person didn't give me this. But
Yeah.
one, you know, once I was like, listening to somebody with my father, and there they were talking about, again, Maya kind of a thing. And in that, they said it very beautifully that, you know, you get fed up of certain things. Like, you know, you feel you've had enough. And as soon as you turn your back and you start walking away, you know, it grabs you from your neck and it says that, you know, you have seen 7 colors. Let me show you eighth. You know, like there's more, there's more, and it pulls you right back. It's just so amazing that how the colors never end, right? Like you must have had like 10, you know, mango shakes, but let me give you 11th one. As in there's nothing new about it, but everything is wrapped into a, you know, new package that it feels it will be new, but once we go in again, it's not. Same I feel with relationships, that we think that we'll, you know, somewhere we keep feeling we'll get it outside, and and you know, right now I'm dealing with certain things in which a lot of families involved and a lot of back and forth is happening. So again, you know, this thing that if you are placed outside, you will not be at peace. You know, like it's not possible. I mean, you can keep coming back to it, but that state of peace is not possible, because I don't know, we are very ironical people. You know, we all say on the mouth, you know, you know, kind of from our mouth, that we want simplicity, we want an uncomplicated life. And yet there are circumstances in which you feel that, okay, you know, 20 years back this happened, and now same thing is happening, as if there is no growth, no learning. And it's like, you know what? So just this, I love I don't know, the force with which it is said here, because, you know, when it's like, when we talk, we want to be polite. We want people to understand, and we are like, you know, maybes and ifs and buts and generally. But I think it's really important to know that it's not there, right? Like somewhere it hits you, really, not even the slightest possibility. You know, perfectly free. How many of us even want to be perfectly free? I think would be a good question to start with. And that is the absolute condition, when one is perfectly surrendered or have, you know, full faith, like we were discussing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
As
free.
you said, yeah, as you said that whenever this any situation arises, new situation, no, that time only I will realize, no, this surrender is not fulfilled now. Again, the mind game. Again, it is not fulfilled now. So it is going on, but yeah, again and again you go inside and find that peace, and also try to make the surrender fulfilled. Again you learn the lesson, again you are doing that. That is the journey, no? Yeah.
You know, we somehow, like when I grew up, you know,
Mm.
made to believe, and my father, you know, he was really into Vedanta and Vedas, and you know, that's like the only conversations I remember having with him. So you know, it was my perception that it's like, you know, maybe a boundary, you know, a thing that you just have to cross over and you're on the other side. Like moksha, you know, maybe is a door and you enter it and you're on the other side. But what I've realized in my life is it's a process, right? A continuous process. There is no crossing over.
Yeah.
You look and you surrender. You look and you surrender again. You again see something coming up and you surrender again. And you know, a lot of people they use this sentence, but I've already surrendered. Yet this is happening. You know, that feels like, oh no, you know, it's like I don't know if there is something like I've already surrendered yet. Because if you even look at mother's prayers and meditation,
Yeah.
he is you know, like talking about it, how it's coming back and she doesn't want it and she remembers and offers, she remembers and offers.
Yeah.
And I think that is where I feel that where she says not losing heart. Like the
Yeah.
first thing I got from the prayers and meditation was that this losing, this falling is part of the journey, right? It's not a fault. It's not a fault. It's a process. The falling is a process through which it would happen. And I think that was a beautiful realization that you don't have to let that fall bring you down, right? You just have to stand again, you know, brush thing and brush it off, like, you know, mother says, and just tell the divine that, you know, I offer this. And but we lose a lot of time in this thing that, oh, I'm still here. Oh, I'm, you know, it's like it seems like another trap of Maya that, you know, another time waste, another thing that how they can get us. And what you were saying, Chitraji, I feel, you know, like they say about the mantras, right? That even if you don't know the meaning, even if you cannot relate it at all, just start with saying the words, right? So I think the same thing I felt when you were discussing about surrender, that, you know, what if it's not complete? What if I don't know? It's
Yeah.
truth that we don't know. There's so much in the subconscious. There's so much.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah. That is the
is
thing.
that, you
Yes.
know, I want
Yeah.
to, I want to, I want to. Feels like that's the only thing we can do at our end, right?
Yeah, sometimes I feel no that new situation arises, new things coming up. There are so many things inside. Maybe this is the path. One of my cousin sisters, she used to tell. She is also in the path. She used to tell, this is the special path. I mean, this mother's path is you will be shown even your previous things, karma. I mean, you'll be shown very clearly. You have to shed all the things. You have to go through it and you have to come out of it. So it will be, I mean, more, as you said, that force will be more actually. That is why sometimes if people say you are in the path, why are you getting angry? Why are you getting irritated easily? It is not a easy irritation or easy anger. We are going through a lot. Mother is showing us a lot. We are trying to overcome it by her grace, by surrendering it, but they won't understand. Definitely. Yeah, yeah, my one of my yeah, she's the youngest one in her family. She is also, I mean, very interested in this path. She used to read mother's writings and she will tell, if I get angry, people will blackmail me. You are in mother's path, how can you get angry? This is a blackmailing clearly, actually, because we will be, I mean, going through a lot, so we can't express it also. So this and all things are happening. We have to, but we should not take it, I mean, as a what I can say, I mean, that getting angry or getting jealousy, we can't say excuses for that, but definitely we must be knowing, yeah, it is a process, we have to surrender it. Yeah, that is the thing. Anybody can share, yeah.
Mother mentions that in order to achieve even the path towards surrender, it entails giving up the ego and one's desires. It begins by that. And then one slowly realizes once one gives up the ego and the desires, which is again very, very difficult. But when he begins with that, you will realize how entangled you are and how easily you are caught up in your desires. And what we call as surrender is only something that we want to give. We don't want, so we say we gave it. But in true spirit, it is not surrender. Because if you genuinely surrender, it means you surrender your ego, you surrender your desires, and then you think that now what are the flaws in me that I need to consecrate to the divine to enable me to achieve not a complete surrender, but a near total surrender. So I feel that because we get entangled on the way, like Taru was saying, that in the Maya of things, in that Maya Jal, we, our desires are by the negative forces. They are waiting to catch us in a weak moment or a crack somewhere in our protection, and then they rush right in to give you a more attractive alternative. And that is what prevents us from going towards a path of surrender. Mother very clearly says, your desires play with you. And we as humans, we try to, we blame something, we want something to blame, so that we can justify that, that's why my surrender is not occurring. But if you really shred yourself bare and look at yourself, completely bare, you just sit down, just transparent in front of mother, you will realize that it is me who did it. It was my desire to go towards this, in this direction. And then I'm saying that no, my surrender is complete, but I've hidden so many things in my little piggy bag, and I've kept them for another day. I have realized time and again that every time in the past, I was not willing to bear myself raw completely. I always wanted to hold back. My desires prevented me from becoming a Kangal. A Kangal is a penniless person, something like that. And I think that is where our our surrender is always incomplete. It's always held back. She has spoken on it, and when the discussion on this much of the paragraph gets over, then I will read what what she says, and it makes it quite clear to us that it is we who are holding, and we, our desires and our ego, which prevents us from completely unveiling our mistakes or our faults. And she says, even if you made a mistake before, you've made blunders, you made huge mistakes, you surrender them to me, you know. And it was a big eye opener for me, because I always used to feel guilty that there were certain actions which I did in my life in the past which were just not ethically right, or they didn't at that time. I could justify them, but I cannot justify them now. So I felt that no, I will never achieve anything on the path, because my surrender will always leave that little cheating piggyback with me. Just last week, I was reading. She says, however ugly it is and however bad, the moment you accept that this was your mistake and you consecrate it to me, you surrender it in totality to me, your job is over. You are free. I will take care of it. And for me, it was a very big unburdening, because I actually felt partly freer. So I think that's my take on your reading, Chitradi.
It's beautiful. Yeah, really. Brought tears. Very nice.
Good evening. I was reading this forward, and while reading, there are some thoughts that are coming to the mind. Uh, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, whoever is seeking God, so whether whenever he used to meet somebody and all, he used to ask, what is the purpose of human life? Why you have taken birth and why you have come into existence? So people used to try to give that answer, but they were not nearing to the correctness also. What he says that the purpose of life is to realize God. So that is our purpose, nothing else. We need not to do anything if we can realize. So the surrender, the moment we talk about the surrender, so this comes into the mind. This total surrender. So there are certain disciples. They came. They were not on proper line, actually, proper path. One of them was Girish Chandra Ghosh. He was a renowned person at the time, Girish Chandra Ghosh, and he was uh, he was a CEO of Star Theatre in Calcutta in the British time. There's a Star Theatre, so he was all in all for Star Theatre. He used to write the text, and he was the director and he was the conductor, everything. He is talented, but he was a drunkard, and he did all nonsense whatever was to be done in the high society. So now he has to be transformed. So he met Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, okay, very simple thing. See, you have to remember about that supreme God or consciousness. At least twice a day, in 24 hours, twice a day, you just remember before going to bed or when you get up early or something. He says, I cannot do because I am drunk. I am drinking every day. So when I go to bed, I don't know. So it is not possible. And in the morning, there is no fixed morning for me. Whenever I get up, my this thing goes off, intoxication goes up, then I come up. So I cannot do anything. Then he said, okay, he tried to talk to him. That at least once he said, no, not possible. When you are going to eat food at the time, he says, I may remember, I may eat at home, I may eat outside, and also there is nothing fixed. I don't know. So then he says, okay, then give me the power of attorney. I'll do it for you. So this power of attorney here, it's actually the surrender. Means you surrender your will totally, 100%. It should be 100%. There is nothing like 99.9%. Like we talk about absolute alcohol, is it cannot be 100%. It is always 99.9% because from the moisture it is taking the this thing. In the chemistry we were taught that it cannot be 100%. But here this 100% surrender we have to do. It's a very difficult task. It's not everybody's uh, piece of cake. Actually. It's not a cakewalk. But there may not be any measurement or anything of this, but we have to believe that this is the only way. The surrender. Once we can do that surrender to the Almighty, and then everything becomes cakewalk. Actually, the life becomes very easy. There will not be any turbulence in life, or anything comes, that can be solved because the direction will come from the top. Actually, because somebody will take care of it. Actually, it automatically comes suddenly, and which probably we have not dreamt, as if somebody is speaking in my ear or something, or showing the way or showing the light, and like that it comes. But we have to practice for a long time. For every one of us, it is not that theoretically we know this is the path, but whatever path we have selected, and we have to practice for a long time. Once we practice and we start realizing that the power, even even some portion of it, if we get, then we can understand that we'll be very happy and we'll be changed person. Actually, all my ego and the desire which is troubling me every moment of time, so that will start getting written off slowly or progressively. And that effort should be there continuously from my side, that yes, I have to, this is my path, I have to go. And unless I totally surrender, I'm not going to leave it. That sort of power I have to have that sort of mind that I will not leave it, and there is no compromise in between. So once that surrender takes place, and then we keep getting the direction from the Almighty. So that was one of the thing which was coming to my mind. And the second thing about that anxiety, this word has come. This anxiety, because to fulfill our desire, we become anxious actually, because we have learned in our jobs and all this, or family affairs. We are experienced. We claim ourselves because of the ego. We understand that I'm experienced. And we try to resolve some issues or solve some issues in a limited time or something immediately. So that anxiety comes. There's anxiety in the medical terminology. They call it, it's a disorder actually. A psychiatric disorder. They call the anxiety neurosis. Doctor, I'm correct? So this anxiety neurosis, even in armed forces and all this, they are downgraded and all, and they are referred to the psychiatrist and all, because somebody wanted to go on leave. So they every time is, no, I have to go on leave because somebody is waiting. I have to look up my mother and this and that. Keep my comes on the mind actually. So we are wasting a lot of time and energy and all, and I'm not a normal person. It becomes anxiety neurosis. So this anxiety, that peace and tranquility of the mind, the uninterrupted joy can be perceived only when we are freedom from the anxiety. So the anxiety, I have to diagnose myself, because I may not be having any guru or anything of this. I have to understand that, do I have that anxiety unnecessarily, or is troubling me, or am I going out of the path, from the surrendering path? That anxiety, once I can reduce that anxiety, then probably peace and uninterrupted joy can be perceived. And once I get the taste of it, and then it becomes easy. Then naturally, I will pursue every day at a fixed time, whether I do meditation or whichever the way I want to go, so that that will ease my path. So this was one of the uh, thought process which was coming while I was reading it again and again. Then one more thing which was coming up is that somebody asked Ramakrishna, and he narrated the story, one story, to that same person. I said Girish Chandra Ghosh. So how to realize God? So he says, the Ramakrishna Paramahansa was telling me that somebody asked his Guruji how to realize God. So he took him to a riverside, and he has to come with me, and the Guruji put that person under water, and they cannot come out. And so he was grasping for breath and breathless, and he was coming out. And after some time, he left him and he came. So he says, Guruji asked, what was your feeling inside? He says, I wanted to come out. I wanted only anything you are thinking about, that, who is your wife, or how are the children, how is the world, or anything, no other thought. There's only one thought was there, that I have to come out of it actually. So that sort of concentration and that sort of devotion, or that sort of say in Sanskrit it is called Byakulata, or say Vairagya. So these are the two words. So he says, unless you are having this sort of Byakulata, you cannot realize God. We have to have that. Then only we can get the realization, or say total surrender. Total surrender will be there. That much of devotion, or the like Byakulata is like perplexity or agitation, or perturbation, bewilderment. This is the bewilderment. This is the words we used. And Vairagya is dispassion, detachment, renunciation. So all these are required in the path to go in the particular way to get that 100% and 100% surrender. So, and by this whatever percentage we have achieved, and we are on the same path, so the surrender will definitely now we'll be able to achieve our goal, what we are planning for. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. You said a lot. It's a lot to process. But just want to share one very small thing, that I hear the the term total surrender a lot. But I wonder if, just like say perfection, right? I don't know if perfection is actually a state, right? It just feels like, again, a process, So I wonder if there's something actually called as to, I mean, there must be, but right now it just seems like, again, I think I'm just repeating myself, the process. And this thing is really, we hear it a lot. You say you want, you say, you get stuck, you say you fall, and yet how badly do you want it? That is just something on the sides we say, right? Like, yeah, if we get it, great, because it's a bit restless, it's a bit of suffering, and then we say, we don't pay the price, and yet we want the full item delivered. That, yeah. So anyone, please, if you have any comments, anything on what Captain had said. Otherwise, I'll request Jyotsna ji after this to share what she wanted to share on surrender. I do have one question from the first story, Captain. Like that person, and I, if I'm being kiddish, you can just stop me. That person could not say God's name even twice a day, right? When Paramhansa was asking him and stuff, and yet Paramhansa said, "Then you give me the power button, you surrender." So if somebody who cannot even remember, I mean, he's such a drunk that he can't remember to say the God's name twice. For him, how is he taking him, to the surrender? It amazes me how these things work, or, how limited my mind thinks. But
No, it is the grace, pure grace. That grace you cannot measure. To whom it will go? It is a sinner, or virtue is there. It won't decide those things. We can't measure that actually. As human beings, no, we can't measure that.
but
Even
the power button. So how does that thing, like
No, in fact, it so happened like, because the story was a little longer. So I have cut short a little
he
bit.
then
So
stopped
even when he came to visit at Dakshineshwar is the place on the river Ganges side. When he came for the visit in his car or the cart on which he came, in that also the liquor bottles are kept. So and Ramakrishna Paramahansa sitting at home, sitting at his room, he came to know that even the bottles are there. So he asked somebody, go and get the bottles, because it should be brought. And nobody has told him that bottles are there and all, but he knew that he is having. So when he was talking about this total surrender, so this chap, he says that I am a papi, I am sinner. I do only sin. Other than that, I do not know anything. I do not do anything. He says, Chitraji was saying that the grace. Ramakrishna Paramahansa uttered one word. He says that even if I blow in that air itself, your everything will go off. He says the person who is there inside me, not he said I, actually, who is residing in me, that person has got so much power that if you just blow the one this thing air from the mouth, and your, even if it is Himalaya type of mountain of crime or this thing which you have done, it will go off. It will go off immediately. So that got stuck to his mind, and he says, my God, it's so powerful, and it can be within, like Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to say that there is 1,000 years of darkness, but you just switch on the light and it goes instantly. So here he believed that 100% actually. Here there was no compromise. He believed him 100% with this, though he was drunk. Then he kept on thinking on that and all, and then he came to the changed path actually. So that was the thing, like that you have to have the 100% belief or faith. Unless that is there, if a certain percentage of doubt, then surrender, it's not possible. It is not at all possible for your mind. I think I have answered your query.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact that, he was in front of Ramakrishna asking for a solution, I think that also shows some level of will, or, like,
Yeah, that story is a beautiful story actually. After he surrendered, no, he could not drink much.
Yes.
But yeah, it became less. He
Yes.
said, wow, how can I do like this? After surrendering to you, how can I drink like this? He himself,
Because in the
felt
drink
that.
itself, he was seeing that face
Yeah.
of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa.
Yeah.
Because Ramakrishna says that you can drink, eat anything, but you have to offer to God first. In any
Correct.
food we take, so first you have to have that mantra. Means you have to offer to God, because God has created everything. God has put sunlight in the food grains and all this, and that we are eating. So everybody, if you are not doing that, if you are not praying before, that means we are doing a chori. Actually,
Yeah.
we are thief or robber, because the person who has taken so much of pain to create the food for me, for which I am surviving, and I am not thanking him before I take food. So he says, even if you drink, so that drink is to first offer to God. So then he saw that in the drink that his face is coming and all, and slowly he got rid of all this.
thank you so much. So, Josna ji, should I look up what you are about to share on the incarnate world? You'll have to unmute.
As long as you remain in your corner and follow the course of the ordinary life, it will be there in incarnate word, I'm sure.
Found.
Yeah. So as long as you, I'll try to read the salient one so that we cover the gist of it. As long as you remain in your corner and follow the course of the ordinary life, you are not touched or hurt. But once you come in contact with the divine, there are only two ways open to you. You surrender and merge in it, and your surrender enlarges and it glorifies you, or you revolt and all your possibilities are destroyed and your powers ebb away and are drawn from you into that which you oppose. I found it mind-boggling because for me, I think we have to keep making choices as we travel. So you see the two ways, either you follow or you don't follow, you rebel. There are many wrong ideas current about surrender. Most people seem to look upon surrender as an abdication of the personality. Means it's like leaving the throne. But that is a grievous error. For the individual is meant to manifest one aspect of the divine consciousness, and the expression of its characteristic nature is what creates his personality. And then, by taking the right attitude towards the divine, this personality is purified of all the influences of the lower nature, which diminish and distort it, twist us up. And it becomes more strongly personal, more itself, and more complete. The truth and the power of the personality come out with a more resplendent distinctness. Its character is more precisely marked. It could possibly be when mixed with all the obscurity and ignorance, all the dirt and alloy of the lower nature. It could be mixed. It undergoes a heightening and a glorification, an aggrandizement of capacity, a realization of the maximum of its possibilities. I think a kind of a realization comes in us that we can go higher and we can reach more, and we can achieve better and better and better. And um, then I'll skip a few lines. He must throw from him whatever belongs to the ignorant lower movements of the ordinary mind and his blind limping ordinary life. Means we have to probably rise above ordinary life. The first of all, he must give up his desires, Mother says. For desire is the most obscure and the most obscuring movement of the lower nature. Desires are motions of weakness and ignorance, and they keep you chained to your weakness and to your ignorance. Desires are waves of the vast sea of the obscure lower nature, and they pass from one person to another. Men do not generate a desire in themselves, but they are invaded by these waves, and whoever is open and without defense is caught in them and tossed about. Uh, um, in reality, it has nothing to do with his true nature. It is the same with all lower impulses: jealousy or envy, hatred or violence. Uh, I skipped again, and then they are no intrinsic or inseparable part of yourself, but come out of the sea of surrounding obscurity in which move the forces of the lower nature. These desires, these passions have no personality. There is nothing in them or their action that is peculiar to you. They manifest in the same way in everyone. This was again an eye opener for me, because I used to think, okay, I'm not feeling jealous, but they feel so jealous. And then everyone used to say, you should feel jealous. It's not normal not to feel jealous. You know, if somebody does this, you must feel jealous. You're living in a family. And then when I read this, I realized Mother says that in everyone, manifestation is same. Maybe the outer mode of the manifestation may be pink, green, yellow, blue, but manifestation is color. Then she says again, and yet each goes on believing that these movements are part of himself and a precious product of his own free personality, which it's not. Then I again skipped and I said the great difference between spirituality and morality, two things that are constantly confused with each other. But then it sort of deviates, so I'll stop here. Because then Mother links it to your morality and what morality is and what it is not. And she says morality is not divine or of the divine, it is of man and human. I always thought in my little ordinary mind that morality was divine. To be moral meant being closer to the divine. But she says, no, it's not divine or of the divine. It is of man and human nature. We created it. Again, it's a huge learning for me. But the spiritual life demands that you should reject desire altogether. Again, a tough call, but I think if we try, at least we'll go 50%. Its law is that you must cast aside all movements that draw you away from the divine. So, usually, when I think in us, when desire manifests, it is something that is very attractive, but somewhere in our hearts, we know that it is taking us away from the divine. But we don't want to listen to that because we want to do this. We are very excited. I think somewhere we read it, Taru, that we get so enamored by the vital showing us the stars and the shiny stuff that we tell this voice, shut up, let me just enjoy this. And you must reject them, mother says, not because they are bad in themselves, for they may be good for another man or in another sphere, but because they belong to the impulses or forces that, being unillumined and ignorant, stand in the way of your approach to the divine. They are the ones that stop you, curtail your being illumined towards going towards divinity. All desires, whether good or bad, come within this description. For desire itself arises from an unillumined vital being and its ignorance. She says it so well that you really feel that you can struggle to reach the divine. On the other hand, you must accept all movements that bring you into contact with the divine, but you accept them not because they are good in themselves, but because they bring you to the divine. The ordinary, let us take an illustration of the difference between the moral and the spiritual view of things. What is moral, what is correct, and what is spiritual. The ordinary social notions distinguish between two classes of men, the generous and the avaricious, the greedy. But to the spiritual vision, they both stand on the same level, both the avaricious and the generous. The generosity of the one, the avarice of the other are deformations of our higher truth, a greater divine power. These are deformations because generosity, in a layman's terms, is a twisted version of the ego. We think we are giving, we are helping somebody. And avariciousness is greed. Again, it is the negative presentation. Behind the generous man and his generosity is a soul type that expresses this movement. He is a power for diffusion and for wide distribution. Both are important, both needed in the entire plan. The movement that stores up and concentrates is no less needed than the movement that spreads and diffuses. But when they are not surrendered, both are alike moved by impulses of total ignorance. One is pushed to throw away, the other is pulled towards keeping back. But both are driven by forces obscure to their own consciousness. One could say to the much praised, generous man from the higher point of vision of yoga, all your impulses of generosity are nothing in the values of the spirit, for they come from ego and ignorant desire. And on the other hand, among those who are accused of avarice, greed, hoarding, you can see sometimes a man amassing and hoarding, full of a quiet and concentrated determination in the work assigned to him by his nature, who once awakened would make a very good instrument of the divine. Ordinarily, the avaricious man acts from ego and desire, like his opposite. Both will have to purify themselves and change before they make contact with with that something higher that is behind them and express it in a way to which they are called by their nature. So she says in the end, each is a diminution or caricature of the type intended by the divine, a mental and vital distortion of things that have a greater spiritual value, in essence. It is a wrong movement that creates the distortion or the caricature. Once this false impulsion is mastered, the right attitude taken, the right movement found, all reveal their divine values. Both these people can become divine. Again, it was a big hit on my head that either person can, with grace, turn to extreme divinity very rapidly. All are justified by the truth that is in them, all equally important, equally needed, different but indispensable instruments of the divine manifestation. I was really shaken by this entire chapter because the average impression I had of a hoarder or, you know, a generous man, and I always thought was very noble. No,
Again, this will help you to feel that oneness. No, I feel like that actually.
yes,
Yeah, that feel that oneness. Yeah, of course, we can't have contact with all the people. I mean, close contact, but at least we can feel that oneness. No, because everyone has the possibility to manifest the divine. That much Mother is telling. Yeah, I felt like that when you are reading. Yeah, thank you.
when you read it the first time, no, Taru, it's a bumper, okay. But when you sit down quietly and you go through it, then you connect with people. You know, you'll on a human level, you'll connect and associate it with someone. Oh, I used to think he's so noble, or I want to be like him. And then you realize that it all crumbles, and you're actually sitting like in the ashes at mother's feet, and you're saying, Ma, what were my stupid beliefs? Where was I? Why didn't I wake up earlier? Now at this stage, now I'm getting those little, hammers. But then on the other hand, when you actually sit down to think, you feel that not bad. At this age also, I'm able to figure out. So there is a purpose in it. Because there is a similar parallel discussion by Mother on surrender and sacrifice. She speaks at length on it and how ugly so-called sacrifice is and what is the difference of surrender. But then that's a whole new topic by itself. And how we guys, we love so-called martyrdom. I made this sacrifice for my daughter and I did this for my son and I did this for XYZ, whereas actually it doesn't exist. It's a very ugly word. I again didn't know that it was so ugly till I read Mother. And she said, no, that your notions are wrong. We should take that topic up sometime. surrender and sacrifice, she explains so beautifully, you know, and how ugly it is. And in
Because
fact,
those sacrifice always ended up in a expectation, no? I sacrifice for you, you do it for me. That is the ugly thing there. If you don't expect and you are doing with wholeheartedness, I mean, there is no problem. But if you all our instincts,
called a sacrifice, Chitradi.
mm,
That is, you just give and it's over.
yeah,
You go ahead, you give
yeah,
and go. So it's not a sacrifice. You're not giving of yourself.
yeah.
It goes this topic. Um, when you study it, it goes bumper initially, but then later, once it sinks in, it starts to change your personality totally. You know, there's so many things fit in to the cogwheels. So many attitudes change towards.
Jyotsna ji, it's funny what you just shared, that how it fits in, because like for me, at times what happens, and it happened right now as well, somehow it feels that like the cog wheels, they are getting removed. As in, I had felt that this is how the cogs go in, and you read something like this, although we do get glimpses of this in several readings, but when you read it head on, suddenly it feels that, oh, something was wrong, and it got kind of a new pathway was made. Till there will be, I don't know, no pathways. But it's just amazing that how limited our judgments are, right? Like how we think that, like you were saying, that I wish I was like that person, right? And that person might be in the dumps. And yet what I can see, I want to go for that. And I think the whole thing that you read, it was all about, it just matters the center from where you're operating, right? Like not doing it as a doer. Like, okay, when I want to be generous, when generosity comes through me, I'm generous, right? When that hoarding thing is coming, I am a hoarder. So, I am the sinner, I am the sin, I am the priest. Like it's just so beautiful that I am undefinable again, right? But me being me, I keep on jumping to definitions and titles. And how one day I was having this conversation with someone that, somebody, like again comparing family members, that someone is here, the other person is here, and you're pulling each other ahead or behind. And but something just made me realize that it is my perception, right? That there's a finish line and somebody's ahead and somebody's behind, but it's all a circle, right? Like I have no idea which end is where, who's near, who's far, and I sitting on my high horses are commenting on people, like how and from where, right? Like I don't know, like it just feels that we think he's forward, he's back, he's good, he's bad, and I have zero clue. Again, readings like this, they really help you in giving you a tight slap on your face that what have you been thinking, right? Like, and it's not about your thinking wrong, it's just about everything you think is wrong. So stop making judgments, I think that would be, at least I hope that would be the end. They don't now just start following this, like, the whole thinking thing has to be let go on, that whatever it is being coming from my limited mind, it will be limited, right? And that's what they say about truth, that you can never know truth being where you are, but you can know the false and dropping it, dropping it, dropping it, dropping it. So beautifully, I mean, it was an amazing thing that you shared, the twist and the turns, and true for all ends of duality, right? Like each and everything we can take in our limited definitions.
I sometimes, when I am reading Mother, or like I'm reading with all of us, I feel that it's like the Rubik Cube, you know? We juggle and we juggle and we juggle and juggle. And suddenly, one phase it comes into place. But then when you turn it around, the others are all jumble mumbled, so you're still not there. So for me, it's a constant tussle with that Rubik cube. That acha, ye one side is done. Little bit of this side is getting done, but all the others have got jumbled again. And so you go back, that when will I achieve something better? And it's a process of I I would say about myself, the more humility you bring in you, the more intense humility you bring in you, and you operate from that level. Mother's sayings strike us more acutely, because we are sort of urging to learn or absorb, and I feel then हमारी like tube light jalti hai, because you could have read this 20 times and it won't make sense, but then suddenly one fine day it makes sense. So I guess it's the spirit in which we look at something, and nothing is difficult. A lot of sadhaks in the ashram have told me that never look at anything from the mental plane. Don't read. Don't decide that you have to read a page a day, and don't decide that, I'll just do this. They told me, you just sit down, surrender, and say, take me along your story. There are days when I can read 8, 10, 15 pages, and there are days when I can't go beyond 2 lines. And those same 2 lines just keep on reverberating, or something that captain has said to us, like he will tell us a story, and the story will keep playing till, I'll find a connect that, this is what he said, this is what Chitradi said, and somewhere it fits here. But if you ask me to quote the same thing out of Savitri, I'm a zero. I can't. So maybe it's something to do with my age also, because I cannot remember everything. And I try quite hard to cram. But then somewhere that, the tube light lights, and that craving comes. I feel if we try, even to your chapter, no, Chitradi, your paragraph, I feel if we give up ego and desire, and we don't give in to any negative force coming into us, I'm sure our surrender will improve. I have tried it in my
Yeah,
case.
yes.
I have beaten myself quite a bit, but I think
The way it was written, that it's like a wave of desire just comes and it just engulfs you. Just very fascinating. And yet, Mother says that we have the choice to, not have that overtake us. And still, we mostly do not feel we have that choice, right? Like when that wave comes, it just, you don't know where that came from. And it's really nice, because when it comes to you, again, that brings so much humility, because you think that, my God, how can that person do that? And when you are there doing the same thing, that's the best way it could be taught, right? By experience, by example. So like when Chitraji was also reading, I felt this thing that we have to look under so many rocks and realize there's nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. And we have to do it ourselves, right? Like we cannot just go into it saying that, oh, I know there's nothing under any rock and I don't have to look, and here I surrender. I have to first pick up rocks, look under all the ones that are there that I want to, and then finally, fall down in exhaustion or whatever, that it's not there. It's not there. I have to first make the effort. And
Like a simple thing, I know that I'm not going to be able to attend our prayers and meditations for 6-7 weeks, okay, or 8 weeks, whatever. That yearning is so strong that there is nothing that, as soon as I finish that I've planned it in my head that as soon as I'll finish with my class, I will immediately go to your recording. But the impact of the recording is never the same. We listen, the person speaks, but the energy doesn't transmit. So I tried it this last Tuesday, and then I was thinking to myself, but how else can I make it work? Because we definitely, when we connect, we are transparent in our negatives which we possess, and we only learn that we got to give them up. We have to give them up. We don't have choices. Though we run behind the attractive things, but then, like I realized that no, I was telling my husband, I said, no, but my craving is here. He said, then why did you join this? I said, but I wanted to do that too. He says, that is what you speak of when you say you desire, you know.
I had got little something to share as well, but after what Josna ji has said, I to feel totally done. But should I share it a bit? I don't know. It's already, yeah, a little bit. Let's just one
Share.
time see.
Yeah.
And oh, I had taken it off. 1 second. So it was on happiness. It's a long one, but like just maybe I think from here I like this one the best. Like yeah, I think having tasted the sweetness of solitude and the supreme peace, a man is liberated from suffering and evil, for he partakes of the sweetness of devotion to the truth. It's good to contemplate the noble ones. To live near them is an endless happiness. One could be always happy by avoiding the sight of fools. One who frequents fools is bound to suffer long. The company of fools is as painful as that of enemies. To live in the company of the sages is to share the happiness of one who lives among his kinsmen. Seek therefore the company of the sage who is steadfast, learned, wise, devoted, and noble. Follow the example of such a good and wise being as the moon follows the path of the stars. Like it has no other way, right? It has no choice. It has to follow the path of stars. I had liked this thing, but overall it's quite beautiful. It's on happiness. Among those who hate, happy are we who live without hatred. Although, it's kind of sounding ironical to what you just shared, Josna ji, but yet I felt it was more about gratitude, right? And recognizing that, okay, among men who hate, let us live free from hatred. Among those who suffer, happy are we to live without suffering. Among men who suffer, let us live free from suffering. Among those who are full of greed, happy are we to live without greed. Among the greedy, let us live free from greed. Happy indeed are we who own nothing. We shall feed upon delight like the radiant gods. Victory engenders enmity, and one who is vanquished lives in distress. The man of peace lives in gladness, disdaining both victory and defeat. There is no greater fire than lust, no greater misfortune than hatred. There is no greater misery than existence. I really like this one. There is no greater misery than existence. No bliss greater than the supreme peace. Hunger is the worst malady. Existence is the worst calamity. One who has understood this realizes that nirvana is the supreme happiness. Health is the greatest acquisition, contentment the greatest treasure. A faithful friend is the best companion, and nirvana the supreme happiness. I think we have read it all. It was, I don't know, I liked it. Yeah.
It's very true.
Mother's sayings or this one?
I just came across it. I was looking for something else. I liked it. It's
Yeah.
to know that I
It's
know.
complete works of the mother, CWM.
Yeah, the awakened one, the Buddha. Okay. Yeah.
She's on
okay.
Dhammapada. You know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in which she was reading Dhammapada a lot, and
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we'll end it here.
Yeah, it's going on really. Don't feel like ending today. I don't know.
Jyotsna ji, I share what you had shared on the group so that others can read it too. It was really nice. And yeah, so any last comments, anything, or then we can end.
Yeah.
I don't have any books here in this house.
Okay.
This is my Bible here. The small book of yoga.
Yeah.
The print is so tiny, but so much is crammed in, and I feel maybe that's why I learn so much, because I have no more.
Yeah, that's true.
Hi, Vita.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah. Hello. Hmm.
So end
Yeah.
the recording and yeah. I stop the recording.